the morning sun crept slowly over the rice fields of San Isidro, a sleepy village tucked between the emerald mountains of the Philippines. The air smelled faintly of rain, soaked soil and mango blossoms. As the roosters crowed and the church bells chimed faintly in the distance, a young man in a worn white cassock moved quietly inside the chapel, sweeping the wooden floor with gentle, rhythmic strokes. Father Miguel Santos had been awake since before dawn. The chapel, though humble and small, was the heart of the village, its cracked walls bearing witness to generations of prayers, weddings and funerals. Now, under the dim light that streamed through broken stained glass windows, he worked alone, humming softly. His voice, warm, pure and untrained, filled the silence with something sacred. "Father Miguel," a small voice called from the doorway. It was Tomas, a barefoot boy holding a small basket of gavas. "Nene said you haven't eaten yet." Miguel smiled, setting aside the broom. "Ah, Tomas, you're my blessing this morning." The boy grinned proudly and handed him the fruit. Miguel took one and bit into it, its sweetness cutting through his fatigue. "Tell your mother thank you, and tell her I'll stop by this afternoon to bless her new crops." Tomas nodded eagerly before darting away down the dusty path. Miguel watched him go, the joy in the boy's voice reminding him of simpler days. Days before his mother had fallen ill, before the weight of priesthood had settled on his young shoulders. He turned back to the chapel. The wooden pews were chipped, and one of the ceiling fans hung precariously by a wire. The paint peeled like dry bark, and every time it rained, the roof leaked above the altar. Yet to him, it was still beautiful. This was where he had found God. This was where his mother had once knelt every morning, whispering prayers for strength. He walked to the front pew and sat quietly, eyes on the faded cross. His reflection in the glass caught the flicker of candlelight, eyes wary but kind, hands calloused from fixing leaks and feeding the poor. At 22, Father Miguel was one of the youngest priests in the region. But what made him special wasn't his youth. It was his heart. In a village where many families struggled to put food on the table, Miguel had made it his mission to be more than a priest. He was a teacher, a cook, a farmer, and sometimes even a nurse. He helped rebuild homes after storms, taught children to read, and sang at every funeral to comfort grieving souls. But even the most selfless hearts carry their own battles. When the morning sun reached the chapel doors, he heard the sound of a weak cough from outside. His heart tightened. He knew that cough anywhere. He stepped outside and there she was, his mother, Maria Santos, leaning against a wooden cane, her frail frame draped in a simple floral dress. "Mama, you shouldn't be out here," he said, rushing to her side. She smiled faintly, her voice soft but steady. "And you shouldn't be working alone. Even priests need help sometimes." He guided her to the front steps and helped her sit. Her eyes, though dimmed by illness, still shone with pride. "The chapel looks clean," she said, gazing at the doorway. "Your father would be proud." Miguel knelt beside her. "It's falling apart, Mama. The roof leaks. The benches are broken. We need to fix it before the next typhoon." Maria chuckled lightly. "God doesn't need perfect walls, my son. He listens to perfect hearts." Her words silenced him. He looked at her, the woman who had raised him alone, who sold vegetables at the market just to pay for his seminary fees, who never complained even when her body began to fail. Now, as she coughed again, he could feel her slipping away slowly, day by day. Later that morning, as villagers began to arrive for Sunday Mass, Miguel led the choir in a hymn. His voice rose above the wooden rafters, rich and filled with emotion. The villagers closed their eyes as his song wrapped around them like sunlight through stained glass. "You are the light upon my path, the breath that gives me song." It was in these moments that Miguel felt his soul alive, when music became prayer, and prayer became something divine. After the service, while he helped serve food to the children, a tall foreign man approached him. A missionary named Father Thomas, visiting from London. "You have an incredible gift, Father Miguel," he said, shaking his hand. "That voice, it's something truly special." Miguel smiled shyly. "It's just how I pray." "No," Father Thomas insisted, taking out his phone. "It's how the world needs to pray." "May I record you?" Miguel hesitated. "For what?" "Just to share with my parish back home. People there have forgotten what faith sounds like." "Out of courtesy," Miguel agreed. Standing before the small altar, he sang again, his voice echoing through the chapel and out into the fields. When he finished, the missionary was speechless. "Thank you," he whispered, eyes glistening. 2 weeks later, Miguel's quiet life changed forever. It started with whispers. Villagers running toward the chapel holding their phones, faces glowing with disbelief. "Father, you're on the internet?" one shouted. "Millions of views? What do you mean?" Miguel asked, confused. Father Thomas had posted the video online, and it had exploded across social media. People from around the world were commenting, calling his voice angelic, heavenly, a gift from God. News outlets wanted interviews, talent agencies sent offers, and messages poured in from strangers saying his song had made them cry. Miguel could hardly process it. Fame was something he never sought. But then came one email that made him stop breathing. An official invitation to audition for Britain's Got Talent. He sat in silence that night, the paper trembling in his hands. His mother watched from her bed, smiling faintly. "You should go," she whispered. "I can't," he replied, voice cracking. "I'm a priest, I belong here." She reached out, touching his hand. "Maybe God wants your song to reach farther than this chapel." He looked at her, eyes wet. "But what if people laugh at me?" "Then sing louder," she said softly. "Because you're not singing for them. You're singing for the one who gave you the voice." Outside, the night deepened over the quiet village, and the stars burned brighter than usual. Inside the chapel, Miguel knelt before the altar holding his mother's rosary. The invitation lay beside the flickering candlelight. He prayed, not for fame, not for courage, but for purpose. And in the stillness of that prayer, he felt it, a whisper in his heart. "Go, my son, the world needs your song." London's chill bit through the air as Father Miguel stepped out of the taxi and stared up at the towering arena where dreams were either made or broken. The bold, glowing letters read, "Britain's Got Talent." The sheer scale of it left him breathless. Thousands of people were gathered outside, waving banners, taking selfies, shouting with excitement. The noise was overwhelming, so different from the quiet mornings in his small village chapel. He clutched his mother's worn rosary in his pocket, rubbing his thumb along the smooth beads as though to anchor himself. The cold London wind tugged at his cassock, and for a fleeting second, he felt like a child again, uncertain, lost, and far from home. Inside, the backstage area buzzed with energy. Performers in glittering costumes practiced routines, dancers stretched, magicians fiddled with their props, and singers rehearsed nervously in corners. Cameras rolled, producers barked instructions, and laughter echoed through the hallways. Miguel stood quietly near the wall watching. His priest collar made him stand out immediately. A few contestants gave him curious looks, whispering, "Is that a real priest?" One young woman, a dancer in sequins, approached him shyly. "Are you competing, Father?" she asked. Miguel smiled warmly. "Yes, I suppose I am." She looked puzzled. "That's amazing. What will you do? Preach?" He chuckled softly. "No, I'll sing." Her eyes widened. "Then may God help us all, because you must be incredible." Miguel laughed, though his heart pounded inside his chest. He didn't feel incredible. He felt terrified. What was he doing here? This wasn't a chapel. This was a stage where millions would judge every note, every breath. A producer handed him a microphone and led him toward the stage entrance. "You're up next, Father Miguel Santos." The man said briskly. "Remember, take your time. Be yourself. The judges love authenticity. Be yourself." Those words echoed painfully. Who was he here? A priest? A singer? A son trying to save his mother? He closed his eyes for a moment, whispering under his breath, "Lord, I am not here for fame. Let me be an instrument of your peace." The stage manager raised her hand. "You're on in 10 seconds. Miguel stepped forward, his legs trembled. The blinding light of the stage hit him like a sunrise, hot, dazzling, merciless. The vast crowd stretched into darkness, cameras flashing like stars. He could barely make out the faces of the 4 judges sitting before him: Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, Alicia Dixon and Bruno Tonioli. "Hello," Simon began, his tone neutral but curious. "What's your name, and where are you from?" Miguel adjusted the mic, his voice soft but clear. "My name is Father Miguel Santos, and I come from a small village in the Philippines." A quiet murmur rippled through the audience. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Father, as in priest?" "Yes, sir," Miguel said humbly, smiling slightly. "I am a Catholic priest." Alicia leaned forward. "Wow, that's a first. And what made you decide to come here today?" Miguel hesitated. "Where I come from, music is how we pray. My mother is very sick, and I wanted to sing, not just for her, but for everyone who needs hope." The crowd went silent. Even the judge's expression softened. Simon nodded slightly. "All right then, Father, the stage is yours." Miguel inhaled deeply, closing his eyes. He whispered, "This is for you, Mama." Then the first note of "You Raise Me Up" filled the arena. At first, his voice was soft, almost trembling, like a candle's flame in the wind. But as the melody grew, so did his strength. Each lyric carried the weight of his prayers, each rise of tone a plea from his heart. His voice soared, rich, powerful, pure. The entire hall fell into reverent silence. The background faded for him. He didn't see cameras, judges or audience. He saw his mother's fragile smile, the flickering candles of his chapel, the faces of children singing along to his hymns. He felt God's presence in every note. "You raise me up, so I can stand on mountains." A woman in the front row wiped her tears. A man clasped his hands together, whispering something under his breath. Even Simon Cowell, known for his stoic composure, blinked several times and shifted in his seat. When the final note rang out, the sound hung in the air like incense. Miguel bowed his head, tears streaming freely down his cheeks. The hall was silent, utterly still for 3 long seconds. Then, like a thunderstorm breaking over the horizon, the crowd erupted. People leaped to their feet, clapping and shouting. The camera panned over the judges. Amanda and Alicia were already standing, tears glistening in their eyes. Bruno was visibly trembling, hand over his heart. Simon sat still for a moment, his lips pressed together, his eyes moist. Then he too stood up and began to clap slowly, deliberately, eyes fixed on Miguel. Miguel looked overwhelmed, hands trembling, his rosary glinting under the lights. Simon leaned into the mic. "I've been doing this show for a long time," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "And every so often, someone reminds us what this is really about. You didn't just sing, Father, you healed us, you made us feel something pure." The crowd roared again. Alicia wiped her tears. "That was heavenly. You have the voice of someone who truly believes what he's singing. That's rare. You made everyone in this room remember what faith feels like." Amanda nodded. "I don't think we were listening to a performance. We were listening to a prayer." Miguel smiled through his tears, his voice trembling as he replied, "Thank you. I'm just grateful to share what I was given. I believe music is God's way of touching hearts when words fail." Simon leaned forward again. "Father, can I ask, what would you do if you won?" Miguel took a breath, his eyes glistening under the lights. "I would build a small hospital in my village. Many people there can't afford medicine. My mother, she's one of them. If this is God's way of helping me help them, then I will follow wherever He leads." The audience erupted again, cheering, clapping, many in tears. Backstage, crew members exchanged stunned looks. Even the host, holding back tears, whispered, This is one of those moments people will remember forever." As the applause went on, Miguel looked up toward the ceiling lights, whispering softly, "To you be the glory." And somewhere across the world, in a small Filipino village hospital room, Maria Santos watched the performance on her phone. Her frail hands clasped the same rosary her son held on stage. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "You did it, Anak. You raised me up." In that single moment, across oceans and miles, mother and son were connected by one thing, faith wrapped in music. And the world had just witnessed a miracle sung from the heart of a humble Filipino priest. For several seconds after Father Miguel's final note faded, no one moved. The entire arena, thousands of people, was frozen in silence, as though afraid that even breathing too loudly might shatter the sacredness that still lingered in the air. The stage lights dimmed to a soft golden glow, wrapping the young priest in an almost ethereal light. He stood motionless, chest rising and falling, the microphone trembling slightly in his hand. The quiet was heavier than thunder. Then, like the first clap after a sermon that stirs the soul, a single person stood and began to applaud. Within moments, the sound swelled. Applause thundered through the arena like a wave breaking over a shore, deafening, endless, alive. People rose from their seats, shouting, clapping, crying. Alicia wiped tears from her face openly, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Oh my God." Bruno had both hands over his heart. Amanda reached for Simon's arm, speechless. Miguel blinked against the stage lights, overwhelmed. He had sung in front of 50 people before, never 50,000, and yet, standing there, hearing their cheers, all he could think of was his mother's fragile smile. He looked up instinctively, whispering under his breath, "This is for you." When the applause finally began to soften, Simon leaned into his microphone. His expression, usually hard, unreadable, was uncharacteristically tender. "Father Miguel," he began slowly, "I've been doing this show for a long time. I've seen singers with perfect technique, powerful voices, great range. But tonight," he paused, visibly swallowing back emotion. "Tonight, you reminded all of us what music is supposed to do." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "You made us feel something real, something divine." The crowd roared in agreement, chanting, "Father! Father, Father!" Amanda leaned forward, her eyes still wet. "That was beyond a performance. That was healing. I don't even have the words. Your voice, it felt like a prayer that touched every broken heart in this room." Miguel bowed his head slightly, humbled. "Thank you. That is all I ever wanted, to give people peace, even just for a moment." Alicia dabbed at her eyes. "There's something so sincere about you," she said. "I think we're used to singers coming here chasing fame or success. But you came here carrying love, and it showed in every note." Bruno, still visibly trembling, placed a hand over his chest. "Father, I don't even think this was singing. It was spiritual. I could feel your faith. You turned this arena into a chapel." The audience erupted again, many standing and waving their phones, lights glowing like stars across the darkened arena. Miguel took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to win," he said softly into the mic. "I came to share something my mother taught me. That even when we have nothing, we can still give hope. My village is small, and my mother is very sick. But she told me, if God gives you a voice, use it to heal." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in the front row began to cry openly. Even Simon's usual composure wavered. "Your mother," Simon said quietly, "she must be very proud." Miguel smiled sadly. "She's watching from the hospital right now. She said this stage doesn't need a priest, it needs a prayer. So I brought one." The audience went utterly still. That single line, "It needs a prayer," pierced through the noise and went straight to their hearts. On the screen above the stage, the producers cut to a live feed from the Philippines. There, in a small hospital room, lay Maria Santos, frail but glowing, tears in her eyes as she watched her son. The moment her face appeared on screen, the audience gasped, and Miguel's hand flew to his mouth. "Ma," he whispered, his voice breaking. Maria, holding her phone, smiled weakly. "You did it, Anak. You gave them your heart." A cameraman zoomed in on Miguel's face, his eyes red, tears streaming down freely. It wasn't just a touching moment, it was something sacred. Simon, fighting emotion, leaned closer to his microphone. "I think I speak for all of us," he said quietly, "when I say, this is one of the most beautiful moments we've ever had on this show." The audience cheered again, some waving small Philippine flags they had brought to support other contestants. People from all backgrounds, British, American, Asian, African, were united in that instant by something greater than language. It wasn't just a performance anymore. It was faith, love, and humanity converging into one perfect moment of shared emotion. The host walked on stage, smiling through tears. "Father Miguel, you've moved the judges and the world," she said softly. "Tell us, what inspired you to choose that song?" Miguel hesitated, glancing up at the ceiling lights like he was searching for words. "When I was a child," he began, "my mother used to hum that song whenever I was afraid. We didn't have much, but she said that when we raise others, we rise too. I guess that's what I wanted to do, raise hearts that might be tired, forgotten or hurting." His words echoed through the vast hall, wrapping around the audience like a blessing. Then, unexpectedly, a voice called out from the audience, "Sing it again." Laughter and cheers broke out. The judges smiled, nodding in agreement. "Would you?" Alicia asked gently. "Just one verse." Miguel nodded, setting the mic back to his lips. But this time he sang it softly, without the backing track, without any music. Just his voice. It floated through the air, raw and trembling, carried by nothing but faith. People began to hum along. By the final line, hundreds of voices joined him. The arena, this place built for spectacle, had become a house of worship. When he finished, the applause returned like thunder. But Miguel simply bowed his head. He didn't bask in it. He just smiled, whispered "Salamat po," "thank you," and placed a hand over his heart. Simon raised his hand for silence. His voice was hoarse when he spoke again. "Father Miguel, the world will remember this night." Miguel's eyes widened slightly, unsure what he meant, until he saw Simon reach forward, his hand hovering over the golden buzzer. The crowd went wild, chanting, "Do it." Simon looked up, emotion shining in his eyes. "For your mother, for your people, and for reminding us that kindness still exists in this world." He pressed it. The golden confetti exploded overhead, cascading like sunlight around Miguel as he dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. His rosary slipped from his hands, glinting as it fell among the golden rain. He clutched his chest, tears flooding his face. The hosts rushed in, embracing him. Alicia and Amanda were crying openly. Simon stood, applauding with a quiet, genuine smile, the kind of smile that said this was more than a performance. Backstage, crew members hugged each other. One of the producers, wiping tears, whispered, "I've never felt something like that before." And across the world, social media exploded. Clips of the performance spread like wildfire. People in different countries, Christians, Muslims, atheists alike, shared the same caption: "A voice that heals the world." In hospitals, people played his song for comfort. In churches, pastors spoke of his courage. Even in war-torn places, soldiers listened to his voice through static radios. That night, Father Miguel didn't just move an audience, he reminded the world that hope still sings. And somewhere, in a quiet hospital room back home, Maria Santos whispered her final prayer of gratitude. "Thank you, Lord, for letting my son heal the world with his song." Golden confetti fell like a shower of blessings from heaven. The arena roared with cheers that shook the walls, but for Father Miguel, the world had gone silent. He stood there frozen in disbelief, his breath catching in his throat as thousands of shimmering flakes drifted down around him, each one glowing under the lights like tiny stars. His hands trembled as he looked up, watching the gold rain fall. His lips quivered, his heart thudding wildly in his chest. He had seen golden light before, at dawn, streaming through the broken stained glass of his tiny chapel back home, but never like this. This wasn't sunlight, it was grace made visible. For a moment, he didn't even realize that he was crying. The audience stood, chanting his name, waving flags, clapping so hard it hurt. The hosts ran onto the stage, both of them beaming, their eyes shining with tears. One of them, Aunt, placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Father Miguel," he said over the roar of the crowd, "you've just received the golden buzzer from Simon Cowell." The words didn't feel real. Miguel's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He turned toward the judges' panel where Simon stood, smiling, not the tight, guarded smile he was known for, but something warmer, deeper. Miguel's voice broke as he whispered into the microphone, thank you so much." Simon shook his head. "No, Father," he said softly, "thank you." Amanda dabbed at her eyes, still trembling. "I've never felt anything like that," she said. "You didn't just sing, Father, you made the entire world stop for a moment. That's a gift very few people have." Miguel pressed his hand over his heart, nodding humbly. "It's not my gift," he said through tears. "It's God's, I only borrowed it to give it back." The audience roared again, moved not just by his performance, but by the purity of his words. Alicia leaned forward. "I think everyone here tonight needed to hear your song. The world feels heavy sometimes, but you reminded us that there's still light." Miguel smiled through the tears, whispering, "There's always light. Even in the smallest chapel, it finds a way in." As golden confetti continued to fall, he knelt on the stage floor instinctively, crossing himself. The hosts joined him, bowing their heads for a moment as the entire hall, thousands of people, fell silent again, as if following his prayer. It was a sight no one had ever seen before in the history of Britain's Got Talent. A standing crowd, heads bowed, united in reverence for a song. When Miguel finally stood again, the hosts led him backstage. The moment he stepped off the stage, the crew erupted in applause. Cameramen, makeup artists, sound technicians, people who had seen hundreds of acts, were wiping their eyes. A woman from the crew handed him a tissue, saying, "I'm not even religious, but you made me feel something beautiful." Miguel smiled faintly. That's what faith does. It doesn't demand belief, it offers comfort. He was still trembling when he reached the backstage lounge. His phone, placed on a table, buzzed endlessly with notifications, messages, emails, missed calls. He couldn't keep up. The world had seen his performance live, and it had already gone viral. But before checking any of it, his first thought was of his mother. He grabbed the phone, hands shaking, and dialed home. After 3 rings, her tired voice answered. "Miguel." "Mama," he said, tears streaming down his face again. "Did you see?" On the other side of the screen, Maria Santos sat in her hospital bed, her body frail but her smile radiant. The nurse held the phone for her as she watched the replay of golden confetti falling around her son. "I saw, Anak," she whispered. "You looked like an angel." Miguel laughed through tears. "Mama, I did it! Simon pressed the golden buzzer! Can you believe it?" She nodded slowly, her eyes twinkling. "I can, because I always knew your voice was meant to heal." He bit his lip, trying not to break down. "Mama, I wish you were here. I wish I could hug you." "I'm already there," she said softly. "Every time you sing, I'm beside you. You carried my heart to that stage." For a moment, both were silent. Miguel could hear the faint beeping of hospital machines in the background, the rustle of nurses, the distant sound of rain outside her window. "Do you know what people are calling you?" she said, her voice weak but playful. "The singing priest of hope." He chuckled through his tears. "Mama, that's too much." "No, Anak," she replied, smiling. "It's just enough, because you gave the world what it forgot. Faith wrapped in music." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I promise, Mama, I'll use this chance for good. I'll build the hospital we talked about. For the children, for the people back home, for you." Her eyes softened. "Then I can go in peace." Those words pierced him like a knife. "Don't say that, Mama. You're going to get better." She just smiled. "You already made me better. You gave me something no medicine could, hope." The call ended only because her nurse insisted she rest. Miguel sat in silence, staring at the phone screen long after it went dark. His heart ached, but it also felt full, overflowing with love, gratitude, and something indescribable. Later that night, as he sat alone in his small hotel room, the roar of the audience still echoed faintly in his ears. He turned on the television, and there it was, his performance replaying on every major channel. Headlines scrolled across the bottom: "Filipino priest moves the world to tears on Got Talent." "Simon Cowell's most emotional golden buzzer yet." "Faith meets music." "The moment that stopped time." Clips of the crowd crying, Simon's tearful applause, and Miguel kneeling amid the golden confetti filled the screen. He could barely recognize himself. He muted the TV, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened his small prayer book. The pages were worn, stained by years of tears and travel. Inside the cover was a note from his mother, written years ago when he entered the seminary. "When the world listens, let it hear kindness through you. When it watches, let it see faith in you. Love them, Miguel, not with fame, but with your song." He held the note to his chest, whispering, "I will, Mama, I promise." Then he knelt beside the bed, clasped his hands and prayed. He didn't pray for victory. He didn't pray for fame. He prayed for strength, to carry this newfound light without letting it blind him. Outside, the London night sparkled with city lights, but inside that quiet room, another kind of light burned, gentler, deeper, the kind that comes not from spotlight or stage but from gratitude. Miguel closed his eyes, whispering his final prayer of the night: "Thank you, Lord, for turning my mother's lullaby into the world's song." And as he drifted into exhausted sleep, his phone kept buzzing beside him. Messages pouring in from strangers across the world. Doctors, teachers, refugees, musicians, all writing the same thing in different languages: "Your song healed me." And somewhere, half a world away, Maria Santos smiled in her sleep, for she knew, her son had already won. Weeks passed after Father Miguel's unforgettable golden buzzer moment, but the echo of that night still lingered across the world. His face appeared on news channels. talk shows and social media feeds, everywhere people were talking about the singing priest who made Simon cry. Yet for Miguel, the true miracle wasn't the fame, it was the letters. Every morning, the producers of Britain's Got Talent brought him bags filled with handwritten notes and emails, messages from strangers scattered across continents. A woman from Japan who had lost her husband wrote, "Your song gave me peace." A soldier from Ukraine said, "Your voice reminded me of home." A young man from Brazil confessed, "I was going to give up on life, but when you sang, I cried and decided to try again." Each message was a soul reaching out, and Miguel answered as many as he could, signing every letter with the same 3 words his mother used to say, "You are loved." But amid the light of newfound fame, darkness soon followed. One morning as he sat in the hotel lobby reading messages, a call came from the Philippines. The moment he heard the nurse's trembling voice, the world stopped, his heart pounded painfully in his chest. "Father, your mother, Maria, she's..." He didn't let her finish. The phone slipped from his hand, crashing to the marble floor. The sound seemed to echo forever. Maria Santos, his strength, his prayer, his melody, had slipped away in her sleep. "Peacefully," they said, smiling, as if she had waited for that one last song before she finally let go. Miguel sat there motionless for minutes, his mind blank, his vision blurred. The hotel lobby faded away, replaced by a memory. His mother's trembling hands teaching him to play the old guitar when he was a child, her voice humming softly through the night, her faith unbroken even when hunger gnawed at their bellies. He felt her absence like a hole carved straight through his soul. When he finally returned to the Philippines for her funeral, the sun hung low and gentle over their small village. The chapel was filled beyond its walls. People stood outside holding candles, praying softly. She wasn't just his mother anymore, she had become everyone's. The wooden coffin rested before the altar, surrounded by white flowers and photographs. In one of them, Miguel was a small boy in tattered clothes, sitting beside her on the church steps. She was smiling at him the same way she always did, like she already saw the man he would become. Miguel approached, touching the smooth edge of the coffin with trembling fingers. "Mama," he whispered. "You made it to heaven before me." He smiled weakly through the tears. "I hope you saved me a seat." Then he lifted his guitar, the same one she'd saved up for by selling vegetables in the market years ago, and sat before her. The murmurs faded, even the wind seemed to hush. "I sang for the world because you taught me to," he said softly. "But this song is for you." He began to strum slowly, tenderly. The melody floated through the chapel, familiar, gentle, filled with love. It was the lullaby she used to hum when he couldn't sleep, the one she said angels listened to. As his voice trembled through the words, people wept quietly. The children from the village chore, his students, joined in, their voices rising behind him like soft wings. By the time the song ended, the entire congregation was standing holding hands, singing together. It was no longer a funeral, it was a celebration of love that outlived death. When the last note faded, Miguel looked up at the sky. For a moment, he could swear he saw golden confetti falling, not from the stage lights this time, but from the heavens. Months later, Miguel returned to London for the Britain's Got Talent finale. The arena was packed again, the lights brighter than ever, the world watching. But something in him had changed. As he stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted, chanting his name. Yet he didn't walk like a man chasing victory, he walked like a man carrying peace. The hosts smiled, the judges waved, and Simon spoke first. "Father Miguel," he said, "you've changed this show forever. No matter what happens tonight, you've already won." Miguel bowed slightly. "Thank you, Simon. But I'm not singing tonight to win, I'm singing to honor someone who already won her place in heaven." Simon's expression softened, and the audience went still. Miguel closed his eyes and began. This time there was no orchestra, no fancy lighting, just his voice and the guitar. The song was new, one he had written during the long nights after his mother's passing. It spoke of love that doesn't fade, of hope that rises even after goodbye. As he sang, the giant LED screen behind him showed gentle images, his mother's face, the chapel back home, children laughing in the fields, strangers helping one another, people praying together. By the second verse, the entire audience was crying again. Even Simon, who rarely showed emotion twice, had his hand pressed against his mouth, trying to hold it in. When the final chord echoed through the hall, there was silence, pure, sacred silence. Then, slowly, people began to stand, one by one, until the entire audience was on its feet. The applause thundered through the arena, but Miguel didn't bow. He simply looked upward, tears in his eyes, whispering, "That one was for you, Mama." A few months later, after the season ended, Miguel returned home for good. He didn't chase record deals or fame. Instead, he used his prize money and donations from people around the world to build something his mother had dreamed of, the Maria Santos Children's Hospital. The building stood in the heart of their village, a place where poor families could bring their children for treatment, free of charge. Above the entrance, carved into stone, were his mother's words, "When the world listens, let it hear kindness through you." Miguel worked there every day, sometimes singing for the children, sometimes praying with their parents, sometimes simply sitting in silence beside a hospital bed. He never stopped singing. But now his stage was smaller, lit not by spotlights, but by sunlight streaming through the windows of the hospital chapel, and every time he sang, he felt her beside him. One evening as the sun dipped below the palm trees, a little girl from the hospital tugged on his sleeve. She was frail, her hair thin from treatment, but her eyes sparkled. "Father Miguel," she whispered shyly, "will you sing that song? The one about your way?" Smiled warmly. "Of course." He lifted his guitar, strummed softly and began to sing. The girl leaned against him, listening, her eyes closing in peace. Nurses stood by the door, tears shining in their eyes, and as his voice filled the room, it seemed to float far beyond the hospital walls, out into the fields, the hills, the sea, and into the hearts of everyone who had ever heard him. For his mother's song had become the world's lullaby, a song of faith, love, and endless light. And somewhere, in a heaven bright with golden confetti, Maria Santos smiled, whispering to the angels, "That's my boy."